Assistant Professor Randolph Tan.
Thank you, sir. So first, I would like to declare my interest as an employee of SUSS, which is an institution dedicated to lifelong learning. So I agree with the statement of the motion. Our education strategy must continue to be founded on the basis of a love for learning. I believe, however, that we should also not neglect the role that economic priorities have had in shaping the choices that we have made in this area, both as a society as well as individuals. It is important to recognize that the ultimate satisfaction that individuals derive from learning is often based as much on the fulfillment of practical objectives as it is on Philomathian impulses. In an age of intensifying global and regional economic competition, there is almost no doubt that the economic imperatives determining what we learn, how we learn, and where we learn will only continue to grow in dominance. We should see the education journey of our nation in the light of the challenges we have faced in building our nation. So in that sense, our education system must build on its strengths and anticipate these challenges with future-ready policies that match or exceed the effectiveness of those that other advanced economies have deployed. And there are many of these, most notably those in the OECD. Supporting individuals in their pursuit of a love of learning cannot be allowed to become identified with a denial of the importance of pursuing practical economic value in the learning process. Both should be seen as alternate perspectives of the enrichment of human capital for the individual. A small country like Singapore, whose dependence on workforce performance is now being brought into sharp relief with the simultaneous onslaught of demographic shifts, skills challenges, and productivity concerns, ensuring the human capital security of future generations of workers should be of paramount concern to policymakers. By ensuring we maximize the human capital potential of our small workforce, we can continue to overcome the natural disadvantages of being a small nation competing at the frontiers of technology. The education system we have has been holding out the best hope for expanding opportunities for the disadvantaged. And one of the main challenges we face is to ensure this continues to remain so in the face of the disruptive forces that unsettle both our economy and our society. Since independence, Singapore's education system has enabled widespread participation with a strong emphasis on ensuring universal access to basic education. This approach has brought tangible benefits to large segments of society. In particular, members of the lower income groups have been able to take advantage of significant opportunities for social mobility. So in recent years, with the general elevation of income levels, the challenges have become more complex. Hence, the relevance of this motion to the lower income is especially important. This would bring us back to the fundamental basis of the early success of our system. This is a recognition of the fact that should the opportunities to this group narrow, the overall outcomes to society will worsen. One of the most prominent empirical economic findings in the last few decades has been the determination that the estimated impact that additional years of schooling have on tangible labour market outcomes, especially earnings, is a significant measurable magnitude. In anticipation of this payoff, there has been a change in behaviour, and that is the reason why we have, as a society, witnessed huge individual and societal investments in educational pursuit. The education system must ensure that all segments of society have access that enables them to gain from these payoffs in a manner that at least matches their efforts. The data on the employment outcome of graduates from tertiary institutions in Singapore confirm these points. Nothing emphasizes the importance of educational attainment more than the fact that university graduates, generally speaking, earn more than their polytechnic counterparts. And the pattern is repeated when you compare polytechnic graduates and their ITE counterparts. However, both ratios have dipped from 2007 to 2017, indicating that the disparity between the different levels of tertiary institution graduates has actually narrowed. This shows that even as further education bestows clear advantages in the labour market, the benefits are not confined to further education at university level alone. A solid grounding at any level counts. This is particularly important for social mobility, for it demonstrates the availability of intermediate levels of upgrading which do not prevent those with limited means, financial or otherwise, from attaining the same educational goals as those who are better endowed or better resourced. From 2007 to 2017, the median gross monthly starting salary of graduates in full-time permanent employment grew at a compound annual growth rate of 2.1%. The corresponding figure for post-NS polytechnic graduates is almost the same at 2.2%. For post-NS graduates from ITE, however, the growth was nearly twice this during that period, at 4.1%. Nonetheless, compelling as they are, starting salaries represent only part of the picture about how well any system of education performs. It's important to also consider how well an educational foundation serves its graduates over the span of their careers. The major challenge posed by the rapid advance of technology is the accelerating pace at which knowledge and skills become obsolete. The need to make up for the natural depletion of knowledge is not a concept that is foreign to this House. Members of this House at various points in the last few years have shown a keen understanding of this connection. During the COS debate for the Ministry of Trade and Industry in 1994, for instance, Mr. Kusai Kee, the then member for Tanjong Pagar, had argued that there was a link between the fact that, and I quote, the shelf life of knowledge is becoming shorter and shorter, unquote, and the need to treat education and training as continuing lifelong processes. Again, in 2005, during the COS debate for the Ministry of Education, then nominated Member of Parliament Dr. Loo Chun Yong had warned that, and I quote, even medical knowledge has a half-life of 7 years only, unquote. A year and a half after that, during the debate on the President's address, the Minister of State for Trade and Industry at that time, Mr. Lee Yi-hsien, in pushing for a re-examination of the skills upgrading policy then, had pointed out that half of what you learn in 4 years in polytechnics and universities can become obsolete in 2 years, and they get halved every 2 years, unquote. And much more recently, just this year, during the debate on the annual budget statement, our honourable colleague Mr. Patrick Tay drew attention to the issue of skills being at risk. Mr. Tay's emphasis and those of the other honourable members I cited above should lead us to realise that the shelf life of skills and learning has always been short and is possibly getting even shorter in some fields. Because this shelf life is not much longer than the education and training which had led to their acquisition in the first place, an important objective of a sound education system should be to lay the foundations for a continuous process of learning. There's a really good appreciation about the importance of continuous learning. And there is also widespread acknowledgement that such continuous learning, regardless of whether we speak of lifelong educational pursuit, retraining at work, or continuous upgrading of skills, is thrust upon us by the advance of technology and the resulting decline in the shelf life of knowledge and skills. The imperative for continuing education and lifelong learning to be relevant to the needs of the economy is at least as urgent as it is for early basic education. So adult learners have to juggle different roles, and the immediacy of their roles in the workforce mean that their skills must be responsive to current employer needs. Our education system must meet the needs of lifelong learners and skills upgraders with the same rigor that it has cemented the basic educational foundation of early learners. A system of skills training and upgrading should be built upon a firm foundation imbued in young learners from an early age that learning itself must always be a lifelong pursuit. The importance of learning takes on added prominence during the current industry transformation drive. And a sense of uncertainty pervades not just the adult training landscape, but also affects the sense of direction of young learners, many of whom are openly confused about how they should embark upon seemingly irrevocable decisions about lifelong careers at an early age. So we should be careful to realize that just as sailors who navigate choppy waters need to seek safe harbors to replenish their strength and resupply, it is important for our basic education system to provide anchorage to learners that will stand them in good stead when they embark upon their lifelong learning endeavour. The last thing we want is for everyone to discard the strong foundations currently offered by our education system. Learning is age-dependent, and young learners benefit from the security of a rigorous grounding in the basics. Having a solid foundation in the basics also prepares them for self-directed learning throughout the rest of their lifelong journey as a learner. Hence, while we seek to continually upgrade and keep our education system relevant, we must also seek to retain those fundamental pillars of strength, which continue to have a timeless relevance for any learner. Although there is much scope for policy to promote learning which meets the needs of an advanced economy like ours, the ultimate motivating factor for effective learning is still a love for it. That is why it is important to ensure that policies are an enabler, helping learners to persist in their natural inclination to pursue lifelong learning. In closing, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'd like to give you my response to the two questions you asked. I think, in my opinion, the most important school is the school of life. And that's why I think the most important type of learning is lifelong learning. And my most important teachers have been all of my teachers. In closing, sir, I would like to take this opportunity to also thank the Ministry of Education for its tireless efforts in bringing us to this point of our nation-building journey. So I support the motion.